San Diego Financial Center. And my second guest is going to be Eric Walsh from CBIS Law Group. And then once again, myself, Jonathan here, representing Dad's Corps, which is a part of Say San Diego's Dad's Corps, which is a fatherhood inclusive parenting program, also open to moms. And so we just wanted to go through a little bit of a federal landscape with you. If any of you are not too familiar with the landscape of fatherhood, it's very, very unique. There's a lot of different challenges and unique, wonderful problems that are all, we have opportunities to solve them. So there are, almost 75 million people in the United States who are fathers. Of those, about a third of them are absent fathers. And going all the way down to some interesting backgrounds about some of our fathers as well, that about 17% of households are single fathers, so roughly about 1/5. And of those, of that population, there's also some marginalized groups of fathers that maybe you aren't too aware of, or maybe that don't always come to light in the media or in social media and those kinds of things as well. And that is that there are approximately 95,000 same-sex households with children in the United States, and roughly half of them are male same-sex couples. So there's quite a bit of a challenging landscape on the federal level, and it gets even more unique on the local level here in San Diego. And so for those of you who didn't know, California is what is the 5th largest metropolitan city in the entire nation. It's the 2nd largest in California, and it has the 3rd highest active duty military presence in the nation, with 7 individual military installations itself, not including the Reserve, National Guard, and those as well. A third of all single parents are fathers with little visibility of the unique needs and struggles here in San Diego. And just in general, does anybody, and you feel free to use the chat that is being moderated, or use the emotion or emoticon. Anybody can name 3 fatherhood organizations in San Diego. Anybody at all? I could just put a little thumbs up if you can. Can anybody name 1 fatherhood organization in San Diego? Okay, that's fine. The silence is pretty much where I was. I wasn't aware of any kind of fatherhood programs. And myself as a father and a local San Diegan as well, I didn't know of any before Dad's Corps, and that is a problem. But with all problems, there are unique opportunities for us to be able to talk about the elaborateness of these kind of problems, as well as going into some of these geographic challenges as well. San Diego is an amazing place to live. We've got mountains, oceans, we've got snow. You can literally snowboard and surf in the same day. The only other place you can do that in is Hawaii. So it's a wonderful, beautiful place, but it has a lot of challenges. With those challenges also are cultural and societal barriers. There's a lot of stigmas attached to any kind of cultural, ethnocentric, geopolitical, a lot of different kind of stigmas right now. And a lot of those are also attached to the masculine traits. And so we have a very diverse landscape, if that's what I was trying to alliterate. And so why does this matter? I'm talking about the federal landscape, the local landscape, and I'm talking about fathers. And I asked earlier, if anybody could even name 1 or even 3 fatherhood organizations. And, why does this matter? It matters because fathers are increasingly separated from their children, and fathers don't always have the same access to services. If I could ask anybody here to name even 5, 15, 20 organizations that cater to mothers, you could probably name 50 of them in San Diego. And that in itself is a great solution to a much larger problem, that women do have a lot more needs than men, and mothers especially, but fathers still are a critical role of what we do here at Dad's Corps. And with this unique landscape, being able to challenge some of these implications that arise with our fathers, and have some unmet needs though with that can have detrimental outcomes. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, some of these long-term impacts of a disconnected dad. And so some of these impacts are, disconnected dads have severe repercussions In order to help, we need to know what some of those impacts are. And fathers removed from homes, unfortunately, disproportionate amount of them are fathers of color, indigenous, etc. And they have generational impacts that ripple through for decades. And the fatherhood gap is felt by all of society. When we don't empower our fathers to be involved, fathers to nurture and support them in their growth, damage occurs. And the damage I'm talking about, as you can see with these statistics, is this generational trauma and or a fatherhood wound due to disconnected or uninvolved, or whatever you want to call it. It has serious implications that that's reciprocate and continue on down the line for other kids and those children to raise other kids who have a fatherhood wound as well. Next part here is we're going to talk about how you can be how more involved fathers can lead to these wonderful outcomes. And that's what we're talking about here today. We identified some problems, we identified some, and if you can please keep yourself on mute while we're going through the presentation. I do apologize, I jumped a slide. Oh, hey, welcome, Chase. And so going into this, essentially, involved and intentional fathers have a resounding impact. Children are given a fighting chance to lead a fulfilled life. Engaged fathers inspire, motivate, and encourage their children. And they kind of essentially push them so that everybody falls, everybody fails. But a father's role is to pick the child up, tell them to keep going, get back on the bike, get back on the horse, whatever metaphor you want to use. And it's not just that, but involved, engaged, and intentional fathers lead their families, instill discipline, enforce boundaries, lead by example, and hopefully have a balanced work-life ratio in their own life. And so going into this wonderful thing about fatherhood, the impacts and kind of the positive forces that can come with supporting dads and building equity and building these bridges, I wanted to kind of introduce Say San Diego's Dad's Corps, and just a very brief overview, kind of a 30,000 foot overview of kind of what we do in San Diego, just the historical implications. And so Dad's Corps, like most dreams, started as an idea that quickly gained traction and has been in the local San Diego community since 2008, when it started as Dads on Duty. And it currently has been Dad's Corps since 2012 to present. Dad's Corps just finished its first year out of a 5-year federal grant, meaning that Dad's Corps is going to be around for another 4 years and hopefully even longer than that. We're trying to get those numbers in. The qualifications to be in Dad's Corps are very simple. You have to be a parent or an expecting parent and live in some of our zip codes here in San Diego with at least one child under the age of 25. You can also utilize Dad's Corps if you're outside of our service zones right now with Zoom right now, as we're doing with the Live Well, and I'm sure you've done Zoom classrooms. It's a communication equalizer. We're trying to meet as many people as possible where they are. So we can meet outside those zip codes if we're doing virtual formats, which we do. Community fathers extend to active duty, veteran, low-income fathers, and more, as well as mothers. We even have some cohorts going around, and cohort is a group of people that go through our 8-week program, and some of them are exclusively mothers, which is interesting that it does that way. And then ironically after that, usually the moms bring the dads. And so it's one of those things that whether you're a mother, you're a father, or whether you're a parent in general of all ages, this Dad's Corps is here for you. And so some of the model of what we do here is it's for the English speaking, and by the way, we do have Spanish as well, se habla español. We connect with dads or parents, and we access referrals. We have education and big reasons for connecting Dad's Corps to services, whether it's legal services or we'll talk about in a moment here, San Diego Financial Literacy Center and if you can please stay on mute, please, while we're doing the course. And we'll have an opportunity for questions here towards the end. Thank you so much. We also have a very broad spectrum of evidence-based curriculum that we use, 24/7 Dad, Nurturing Fatherhood, World-Class Communication, as well as a host of other organizations, as I just mentioned, that bridge those gaps. We also do, besides our 8-week cohort, we have individual touch points with our parents, where we do coaching sessions. We do SMART goal implementation. We do anything from role playing and you name it. So it's our opportunity to have one-on-one time, whether it's in person at a cafe or it's virtual. Besides the workshops and those kinds of things, we are realizing that there are some challenges, and some of those challenges that are getting unaddressed and untalked about are mental health counseling services, which we don't have a gap. We can't bridge that gap right now. Economic inequality and lack of equity, as well as accessibility to affordable legal services and mediation, which we're going to talk about just those 3 problems specifically and how those impact the San Diego fathers. So the first one here I want to discuss is access to legal services or mediation. So equitable legal counsel. And as you know, with the cost of living just incredibly high all over the nation, all over the world, San Diego has not been without its fair share of problems. If anything, San Diego is one of the most expensive places to live in the entire nation, if not one of the places in the world. So besides that, some of the things that we're seeing, between rent, food, medications, gas, good grief, lawyers' fees, most fathers are not prepared to endure not only the cost of services to legal representation, but the length of time they would need those services as well. And so sometimes there's no consequences for moms, with manufacturing some things, which we're not going to get into, but there's not a lot of penalties for some of these equitable fatherhood outcomes. And so some of the things that we're seeing is fathers unable to cope with the stress of litigation and acquiescing to the mother's demands, and sometimes increasingly getting more hostile, that leave the dads with feeling of little hope and little choice. Many fathers fear dating sometimes even too, or getting married again, as they don't want to wish or anger that, as sometimes they call it, the baby mama drama. They don't want to anger the reciprocity with the mother, because maybe they've spent some time and it's gotten better, but they don't want it to get worse. And so without this equitable legal services, the dads are pretty much at the whim of the mom, and so it's really affecting a lot of things. Sometimes dads, because they're just not literate with legal stuff. Myself, I've gone through a divorce. I've had to go through the legal process, and it's a completely different language. And if I didn't have my legal representation, I wouldn't know what all these defendant and respondents and all these terms and stuff. And so, no fault to the dads, sometimes they don't know how to understand and comprehend some of these court orders, and it really affects the dads. And sometimes they do things that are against court orders, and they have to accrue fees. Sometimes the dads don't understand the child support, and they have to go through mediation. If they're not paying it, it affects their credit score. If it continues, they get their driver's license suspended. And for dads in San Diego who are truck drivers or mason workers or union workers, or really any kind of work at all that's not virtual, that affects their ability to maintain income and be able to pay that child support, be able to pay rent. And so crippling debt can happen with dads having to take out high interest loans to be able to pay not only the fees and the late fees for child support, but child support in general, as well as rent, gas, and all the other things as well, which can lead to a lot of really depression and grief cycles. The other problem we wanted to talk about is going to be the second one, which is economic stability and economic equity. There's an amazing amount right now of research going on about the pandemic and about inequality and cost of living costs that are going up, inflation. You don't even need to look very far to find all that information. But some of the things about San Diego specifically is just realizing that gentrification is all around us, whether it's places that were more affordable and now are not, people being forced out and having to sometimes move to different states, sometimes even moving to different countries. Myself, I was affected by that as well. And I had to live in Tijuana for a year back in 2019. I couldn't afford to live here. And so it's always about realizing there's a lot of different opportunities for dads. And some of them, because of the cost of living and things, some dads, especially during the pandemic, have had to have multiple jobs, multiple full-time jobs, sometimes having a unbalanced life with having to work maybe 3 jobs, not being able to be there for their kids, be able to help with those homework, all that stuff. And so it really sometimes makes unsafe working conditions for not only the employee, but the employers. And some fathers are sometimes blissfully unaware of even just streaming services. I know myself, I've got a Hulu and Disney Plus, but some people have Netflix and HBO and maybe an HBO Go and other things and gym memberships. And some of them are just blissfully unaware of just all these hidden costs. And, people used to call streaming services, the equalizer, but now with all the streaming services available, some people just do not know how much they're paying for. And so with all that stuff, kind of giving the dads some education about how that kind of things you can just track it, some tips and tricks as well. It's being able to help these dads cope. The biggest thing right now is we're seeing is these dads not able to cope with the stress of these jobs, of maybe even just the one job with all these other things going on. And sometimes it leads to some of the dads, unfortunately, getting evicted or foreclosed on. We're seeing all the eviction moratoriums ending. We're seeing an increase in some of the dads living in vehicles in unsafe conditions. And so it is a huge problem that affects not only the family, the unit, the kids, but it affects us as a society and the taxpayers as well. And so all these things leading also to mental health. We just talked about the legal services. We talked about equity in the workplace and in economic stability, leading all of that into mental health outcomes. And right now, the outcomes for mental health are not very bright. We're starting to see a lot of this stuff where a lot of dads are almost simply just denying even talking about their feelings and thoughts and, the things that are going on in their lives, and maybe even people that are passing away during this incredible time we're living in right now. We need to almost rebrand mental health as mental fitness. And I'm realizing that with working with the active duty and veterans, we talk so much about fitness and mentally fit and those kinds of things, that we need to kind of talk about that more in those terms. And not only does it need the rebranding of that, we also need to have the awareness of sometimes these long wait times. Even if you have the insurance, even if you can pay for the cost of these co-pays that are incredibly higher now, you're still going to get waitlisted. And so even with having these services, even with being able to afford them, the wait lists are incredibly long. And so is some of these dads, if this is their first time trying to get help and they're already seeing so many signs that they can't be helped, they're going to just simply stop looking. They're going to get inundated with all these no's and just simply start doing maybe self-medication, which is easier and is more, it's something they can just go to the store and pick up, which is something that we don't really want our dads to do. We want to have them have positive and healthy coping mechanisms, not self-medicating in ways that can have self-depreciating things, maybe would hurt them litigiously, hurt them with their workplace performance, as well as a lot of those things being downers and would make them even more depressed. And so, I apologize. Without regular activities and that's another thing I want to just bring up before we move to this next section of bridging our gaps is, excuse me, I'm recovering from a cold, is some of these things of just isolation, as I wanted to kind of say. If anything has taught us in 2020 and 2021 is that, yes, we need to isolate to keep each other safe. But if we had all these things in place before, we had sports groups, we had church services, we had nonprofit meetups, these events that were in person before, maybe even workplace holidays and those kinds of things. We're increasingly more isolated, and it's showing up in mental health with our fathers. And so because we're not able to even meet some of our fathers in person, we're already starting to see some of these tendencies of burnout, of stress, increased amounts of stress, which once again is able to just kind of take things downhill pretty fast sometimes. And the biggest thing here is I wanted to mention also is that some dads are having a really hard time relating to their kids with the pandemic and with so many kids having to go to school on Zoom and having to have dad and mom help with the homework. We're realizing and having some of the dads start sharing that they're having a hard time relating to their kids who are constantly on roadblocks or virtual worlds and other things that are 100% screen time, that maybe the dad, there's a digital divide with the dad, and maybe he doesn't know the conversation, how to engage with them because he just wants to throw a football around with them. So it's sometimes with our are talking about this with the dads, we talk about other ways they can use it to improve, whether it's creating an account yourself and playing with your kid online or other things as well, because there's always a way that you can help that. And going into helping, we're going to talk about how we're trying to bridge some of these gaps, as we just mentioned with our legal gap, our economic stability or economic equity, as well as this mental health. We have a lot of gaps that we're trying to fill for our dads who are going through our Dad's Core program. And so we want to simply accentuate the experience for our dads. We want to help in a way that is adapting constantly to this ever-evolving world that we're living in right now. So that's one of the reasons why we have partners, and we need fathers, we need service partners, we need shared resources, we need a collaboration of an ecosystem of collaboration so that our fathers can have equitable access to all the things that they need to be the best parents, providers, and to have the best fatherhood outcomes. And the first one I wanted to talk about in talking about our partnership with the San Diego Financial Literacy Center. And I'm going to give them a moment, Chase Peckham here, a moment to talk about that bridging the gap that we have, I just mentioned, and how they are stepping up to the challenge and even exceeding that challenge. Chase, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm extremely happy to be here, and being San Diego Financial Literacy Center has been a Live Well partner since 2014. And that's exactly what the Live Well was built for, right? It's collaboration in all different sectors of our community. And the SDFLC, the real mission behind it is to educate, empower individuals and families to make sound financial decisions and develop positive personal financial habits for life. And honestly, one of the biggest things about personal finance is we figure that people just know how to do it. That it's just, they grow up, their parents teach them that it's just right of growing up. You're going to figure out how to handle your finances. And most of us find out the hard way. It's trial and error. We don't really know what budgeting is. We just know that budget's like a 4-letter word. We know that a budget to me sounds like I'm being told I can't do something. And when reality, it's not that. And so the SDFLC, we work with organizations like, say, San Diego, Dad's Core, local schools, universities, colleges, other nonprofits. I mean, the nonprofits that we work with all over the country now, especially since COVID has been astronomical, and working with these organizations to bring personal finance to the forefront. All of us know that we all have stories. We all probably have long stories about having to pay off credit card debt, having to try to figure out how to make the car payment, all of those things. So why not simplify it and make it real world conversations and not teach it like it's a textbook? And so when the SDFLC decided that we're going to go in that route and make it less stigmatized, that, talking personal finance is not something that is comfortable for a lot of people, especially depending on your backgrounds. You might have been brought up where we just didn't talk about money. Don't worry about it. Mom and I will handle that, or whatever it might be. So we wanted to make it like, look, most of us don't know what we're doing. So here it is. Let's break it down and let's start over again. And that's what we really work hard on doing with organizations like Dad's Core. So some of the other things that we do, we have 3 different programs that we do, and Boost for Our Heroes program is what we really focus on pretty closely with Dad's Core, say San Diego, and our Smart With Your Money program, which is for adults. And so when we do these programs, we create them specifically for the communities that we're working with. So if it's maybe somebody who has a background with obviously speaking Spanish, or if they have a background in the southern part of San Diego County, we find experts that are from those communities and that can speak that language, so to speak. So people feel more comfortable, like, hey, okay, this person understands where I'm coming from, because that's money to people is completely personal. That's why it's called personal finance. It's different for everyone. And some of the big programs that we have now that we'd like to put and really show that's open to the public is we have what's called our Smart With Your Money financial one-on-one clinics. And these are all virtual now. They are open to the public, and they can meet one-on-one with a personal financial CFP, a certified financial planner that will sit down and talk about anything, work with you on your personal stuff, answer any questions you have for an hour, when a lot of us think, well, a CFP is only for the person that makes a lot of money, high wage earner. What do I need that for? And in reality, that's not what these people are. They can help you identify how to create a roadmap to create a financial future that is a positive one for both you and your family. And working with Dad's Core, and how many times have we think about how often do we actually hear about dads? We tend, and being a dad, we tend to get lost because moms are unbelievable. And, moms are the forefront and the backbone, but there are those dads too. And we could use some help as well. And that's why these programs, these things that we do have become so successful, and working with the collaboration of San Diego County, with government, with nonprofits, with the school systems has been a unique experience and very, very exciting. In fact, if you guys listen to our Talk Wealth to Me podcast, we just talked about stress and how the financial stress can lead to mental health. And I think your idea of rebranding that is a very good idea, because especially in these times when we're getting stress from so many places, the one constant of stress that we can all say has been around forever is money, whether you have it, don't have it, whatever. The idea of keeping it or how to disperse it and how to live on a daily basis can be extraordinarily stressful, and how we deal with that matters. So this is a podcast that is out brand new every single week. It is just one of the myriad of ways that we are trying to push personal finance for free for everyone. And you can find that wherever podcasts are.
Wonderful. That is such I love the message of hope you have there, Chase, about almost demystifying finances. And, even for myself as a father and coming through this program and having this partnership with SDFLC, it's really it's challenged even me, the way I talk about finances, the way I even think about money, and the way I talk to money about with my child, which has been actually a huge blessing, because they even mentioned investments and other things too. And so the more you know, the more you can do. And so when you demystify these topics, especially you gaining more knowledge and having these podcasts and having these free resources, please, it's wonderful. I send my dads to them all the time, and they have wonderful stories to be able to tell about meeting with a CPA and having these times to be able to ask these questions to professionals in ways that can give them maybe not personal business references and those kind of stuff, but helping them in a way so that they feel de-stressed, that they can feel like they have, I have a little bit of a plan now. I've got these things going, rather than just avoiding it like men's health and I won't go to the doctor, so there's nothing wrong. Finance is just like anything else, it's health. And so the more you get it checked up, the more you're talking about it, like with someone like Chase and Felipe and the rest of them, the more that our fathers especially, and I know we talk about fathers a lot today, and I've got a mom, I love my mom, we all have moms. And so it's not, when we say dad stuff, we're not saying anti-mom, it's very much inclusive. And so thank you so much, Chase, for talking just very briefly about our partnership and about creating those bridges for our fathers as well. Thank you for having me. Of course. And Chase will be available towards the end when we have some questions and answers. So if you do have some questions, please put them in the chat. And Daniel, our moderator, will let me know, and we'll be able to answer those here. And we want to go ahead and bring up our next panelist, who is Eric Walsh, and he is from CIBIS, the CIBIS Law Group. And specifically, they are in San Diego, and I don't want to steal any of his thunder. He's a wonderful resource, a wonderful person for our fathers. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it off over to Eric. Eric, are you ready to talk?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. So Jonathan mentioned I am a provisionally licensed attorney with CIBIS Law Group. We deal primarily with family law. We have a partnership with SAY and the Dad's Core, where we, in conjunction with Dad's Core, we host a legal clinic. Usually it's the third Thursday evening of every month, where it's either in person or you can access remotely. If you have questions, legal questions, we can try and answer them, whether it has to do with modifying or increasing custody, visitation, questions about child support, et cetera. Something that you mentioned earlier, Jonathan, is incredibly important and can be incredibly frustrating is how difficult it feels to navigate the legal system sometimes. When people ask me about having gone to law school and what did you learn, I say, essentially, I learned a different language. In law school, you take a relatively simple concept and make it as complicated as possible, and use as many words to make it more complex and difficult than it needs to be. Just a personal story. Unfortunately, my sister is going through a divorce right now, and she asked me to look at her some of her paperwork, and I said, "Okay, I'm going to do that. You're going to take notes." And we went through the 27-page document and took 3 pages of notes on it. That was actually what was relevant from there. So one of the things that we also do at CBIS is, I mentioned this to Jonathan because it's something I personally feel passionate about, is your financial resources shouldn't impact your ability to access justice. So we're kind of a different firm in the sense that we do a lot of flat fee stuff. So you're not paying a huge upfront retainer. You have an idea of, you tell us what you need, we can kind of tailor that based on your resources. One of the things I tell people too is that you can do a lot of this yourself. There are a lot of forms out there you can access, and sometimes, especially during the legal clinics, we can tell people, oh, this is what you want to do. Here's the name of the form. Here's the website. It's free. If you have any questions filling it out, shoot us an email. We'll help you out. Unfortunately, I don't know if this is due to the pandemic or not, but there used to be a resource here in San Diego. It still exists, the Family Law Facilitator, and they can provide some of the same advice. I interned there when I was in law school. We used to help clients fill out the paperwork, explain it, file it. I understand, unfortunately, they're no longer doing that. They'll give you the forms and say, good luck. So that is a huge resource that unfortunately is no longer available to the community. So we're trying to kind of position ourselves to, provide that gap as much as we can in a way that's affordable to people. As I mentioned to Jonathan, actually, when we spoke a little bit about this panel, I'm a dad. I have 2 little girls. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they are the most important thing in the world to me. I cannot imagine not being able to see them whenever I wanted, not to participate in, big and small moments with them. So I definitely can empathize when we have clients, and I can say, okay, well, how would you feel if that was, Lucy or Juliet, and you were affected, and try and bring that same level of passion as if it were me, helping the clients, because I do think it's very important. And I commend all the dads who are bringing their A game every day. So apologize. Our CEO actually was slated in this spot, and unfortunately she lost a family member and she was unable to be here. So I am filling in for her. That's Rebecca Ritchey. She's the CEO of CBIS Law Group. So I appreciate having the opportunity to speak with everyone today, and I commend you all for being here. Thank you.
Oh, goodness. Thank you so much. We appreciate you, Eric, for coming here and kind of, as Chase mentioned, and as you mentioned, a lot of this stuff requires almost a secondary language, whether it's finance or whether it's litigious legal work. And so you guys provide this gap to our fathers that they are in desperate need of a translator. And you guys are this translator. You're the Rosetta Stone of what you do. And whether it's and just as a side note, Eric, when you were talking about having those dads fill out those forms or the parents fill out the forms, I was thinking of the first movie, The Incredibles, and he was a father and he was very strong and just like you. And and the one mom, the old lady who was crying and couldn't afford insurance thing, and he was like, "Oh, don't fill out this form. Don't see Rebecca on the second floor. Don't do this." And it was just like you provided that gap. You demystified it. You went through all that the unnecessariness of sometimes our system and kind of break it down and to make it more bite-sized, chewable pieces. And so I incredibly appreciate what you do, Eric, and what you do, Chase, and kind of breaking it down for our dads so that they can get equitable access to financial access and litigious access. And you both are superheroes in my book. So thank you so much for both what you do. All right, and we're going to go to this last part. Oh, okay, go ahead, Jason. You have anything to say? Okay, all right. We'll have an opportunity here at the very end, which we're actually getting close to our question and answer. But before we get to that part, I wanted to just briefly go over, what are some other areas that are going unaddressed? We talked about, those gaps that we're trying to bridge with SIBUS and with San Diego Financial Literacy Center. But there are definitely some other major gaps in our fences, or whatever you want to call, whatever metaphor you want to use, for our dads, which being able to talk about this is definitely something that is very passionate about me. And as you can kind of see, whether if you're on social media or whatever, there's a lot of things talking about the metaverse and about changing, internet 3.0 and a lot of stuff. But we're already realizing right now with COVID conditions, with the pandemic 2019, 2020, there is an incredible amount of a digital divide that has already taken place and is already on playing that, children, white children in particular, who were going through this pandemic with high school and with middle school, were only about 20% delayed with their education experience. You ask a family of color, whether they're Black, Hispanic, Pacific Islander, and that was threefold. They did not able to keep up with their peers. And so they're almost a year behind the rest of them. And so we're talking about going into Internet 3.0, metaverse, a lot of these other things, and realizing that this bridge, this gap is only going to get bigger. And so there is a huge problem, but with a problem, there's an opportunity. And the biggest one I wanted to just mention is that because we are right now doing virtual cohorts experiences, and we're also doing hybrid ones as well, Dad's Court tries to bridge this gap right now, the digital divide, with some of our parents or reentry parents and some of our lower income fathers that don't have access, have never owned a cell phone, never had a laptop, don't have internet or even reliable internet access. We have equipment, we can sign out to them while they're in our program, while they're working to find employment, so that we can kind of equalize that gap as much as possible and try to get them cheaper laptops, try to get them connected with a broadband internet connection if they're not aware of it, and they can apply through the WIC program and other ones as well. Another one I wanted to kind of talk about, which actually, see, one second here. So all children fell behind in academics. Oh, I apologize. I'm already on this one. Going into the food one. So if you didn't already know this, food insecurity, which is another way of saying people are starving sometimes, it's 1 in 3 people in San Diego County right now is nutritionally insecure. That means they only have one meal accounted for out of the entire day. Whether that is, and most of that is not protein based, it's usually high fructose corn syrup, fast food, those other options. And so it's a major problem in our societies, in our schools, and in our families. And with that as well, most families are choosing between food and medication, food and gas, food and co-pays for mental health. And so realizing that there is a massive need for a revamped food distribution network, which San Diego is in line to meet all those meals, millions of meals that are delivered every single week, whether it's Father Joe's, whether it's the food bank. And so there is still equitable access to it. But some people, if they can't afford the gas to go to East County if they live in North County or South County. These places, even though they operate in that way, still has a divide and still has a non-equitable cost. So the other one I wanted to mention was the exorbitant cost of childcare right now. As we talked about with mental health services, even if you had the money, there's a wait list. And with this reopening of San Diego that happened just recently, and so many people were caught off guard with, oh, I needed to have had my child in a wait list for over a year, or now that they have them open, now they only can do a third of the good grief, a third of the population, third of the amount of children, because of needing to keep the kids further away from each other, limited staff, those kinds of things, rotating days and hours. So even if you could afford it, they're not even offering 100% full day childcare. And so there's also a need for that as well. Childcare for an infant in San Diego a month ranges from a low of $1,200 to up to about $1,700, just a month, just for one child. When the child goes to a school age, we're talking grade school, middle school, high school. Well, more grade school, middle school, high school can watch themselves. We're starting to talk about now the low of $900, $950 to about $1,300 per child. And so we're talking about 6-to-6 programs, YMCA, a lot of other ones. And even the Stay San Diego's prime time as well, it's incredibly expensive, and so that's an avenue of approach. And I know the giant bill just got passed, and I don't know if the childcare was in there as well, but that is a massive need in our infrastructure to be able to pay and have this more equitable access for our mothers and our fathers and all San Diegans to be able to work and get those positive outcomes for our families. The last part here I was going to mention was, I apologize. Yeah, so the mental health one, which I kind of talked about a little bit, I did kind of steal a little bit of that thunder, but it's one of those things where a lot of parents, which once again, I'm reiterating this point, have to choose, and we normally, when we talk about choosing, normally we think of seniors, on limited budgets who have to choose between medication or rent or the other things. Well, it's affecting our other families, our middle class and our lower income families as well. And so realizing and being very strategic with our money and with our planning and our investments, like with San Diego Financial Literacy Center and with CIBIS, we're also needing more partners. We have a tremendous amount of needs for our fathers, needs that we are continually being overwhelmed with. And so it really necessitates a need for us to be able to find more partners, whether it's mental health services, whether it's childcare based, whether it's working with JFS, Jewish Family Services, for the diaper bank, transportation needs, whether it's more streamlined and we get more bus lines, or whether we get a more affordable gas and that kind of stuff as well. And yeah, so the biggest part here is I wanted to just mention is, we could not be successful without your work in the community, with what your partners and agencies do. And we want to make sure that all of our families, whether they're mothers, fathers, or just parents, are thriving in conditions that are equitable for all San Diegans, so that we can build stronger and more successful families. And we definitely need more help, and it's a community of fathers forging fathers. And so at this time, we're going to go to this next part here, which is going to be just simply a call. We are calling for your help, whether it's referring a participant, whether it's your dad, your grandfather, or maybe not your grandfather, but fathers to be, whether it's a active duty or a veteran in San Diego, please refer them to us. We are building a community of fathers forging fathers. Or a partner, if you have services, if you have a space where you can host one of our Dad's Core cohorts, where we can have whether it's San Diego Financial Literacy Center come as well, and maybe Eric can be doing one of his legal clinics over there or something like that. We need spaces, we need partnerships, we need accessibility for our own classrooms. And so if you can offer that, please let us know, as well as being able to market this to our families, our fathers, in a way that is inclusive to all backgrounds, culturally, I'm about to say genetically, sorry, generationally. San Diego is a multi-generational household family kind of style. And so we're trying to market this to everybody because it's applicable for everyone. And the biggest part here is just being inclusive. You know, we want, as we mentioned at the very beginning, and I was asking for a little bit of the participation, if you could name even one organization that was a fatherhood inclusive organization, and it's my hope that at least you have one now. You have Dad's Core, and Dad's Core is trying to change lives. We're trying to change the narrative. We're trying to change it so that we can all realize we can celebrate fatherhood. We can celebrate the masculine. We can celebrate the feminine. We can do it in a way that honors everyone and is inclusive, but that requires your help. And so with that being said, we're going to go ahead and open it up to our Q&A. And so I'm going to go ahead and ask Danny at this time if we have any questions that have been.
So actually, I have a few questions for the panel, but I just want to remind you all that in the feed loop, there is a chat section that you're welcome to list any of the questions that you may have. So feel free to type those in, but I'm going to queue up a few questions for our panel to start. So first question I'm actually going to throw out to all on the panel, and it's just as a reminder, the Dad's Core program, if you're not familiar with it, as Jonathan mentioned at the beginning, you know, it caters to community fathers. Community fathers look like active duty, it looks like veteran, it looks like low income, it looks like fathers that you'll find around San Diego or city of San Diego. So that being said, Dad's Core is a diverse cross-section of dads. And I just wanted to see from your standpoints, panelists, are you seeing any trends or challenges that individuals or individual fathers may be facing based off their backgrounds? Or are you seeing trends where, despite the background, the challenges seem to be the same?
I can go. You know, since the pandemic, things have changed so dramatically. You know, it used to be that, you know, whether we have evolved a lot, but it was always that the father was the provider, and that was the stresses that the father always put on themselves, whether that was right or not. It's just kind of the way that our generations have been brought up. I think that's changing quite a bit, that fathers can look for help and can, you know, our egos aren't quite as large as they used to be. And they're realizing that there are organizations, people that are in the same situation that they are, that they're not alone in these situations, and that they can reach out for help. And that's one of the biggest shifts that I think I've seen in doing all these workshops and working with individuals since the pandemic, is it kind of leveled the field, and like, we're all human and we're all doing in this fight together. And that has been one thing that has been really, really noticeable, especially in the last 18 months or so.
In terms of trends I've been seeing, I guess not really a trend. It's just, again, not to belabor the point, but it's financial resources. Again, granting you access, whether it's legal counsel, whether it's childcare, et cetera. I mean, and the pandemic has kind of increased that, where again, speaking personally, you know, we have my daughter in preschool, there was another child in her class tested positive for COVID. So she couldn't go to school for 2 weeks, even though she had 3 negative tests, but we still had to pay that $1,400 a month. And my wife and I had to figure who was going to work to be with her for 2 weeks. So it's really, you know, and I would say that we have a lot of resources, and it's tough for us. So for people who maybe don't have as many resources, I can't imagine how they're handling all this right now.
Thanks, Eric. What about you, John?
Yeah, so just to piggyback, I guess, on what Eric and Chase kind of already said, I definitely have seen the same thing with access to finances. And, you know, because it's such an equalizer, finances, it pays for everything, whether it's gas or whether it's childcare, whether it's your mortgage or your rent. I am seeing that there are some dads who, even though they have legal access, even though they have opportunities, they still don't have access to their children as much as they wanted to, just due to some of the disparities in our court system. And so I am seeing a more prevalent amount of dads without access that have never had mental health issues, that have never had abuse issues, CPS cases or anything like that, simply but just didn't find the best maybe person to advocate for them. And so I am seeing a lot more dads who begrudgingly are saying, oh, this is just the way it is. It's never gonna get more time with my kid. And having other dads in the groups saying, you know, don't lose hope, please keep fighting. You know, we'll find you something that works for you. So I am seeing that.
Thank you for sharing. So, just a reminder, those in the audience, if it's easier for you to utilize your reactions, you're welcome to, you know, use an emoji if you have a question, to put your hand up. But John, I'm actually going to have the next question for you, and it's that not everyone has had an opportunity to kind of interface with a fatherhood program, and so from your vantage point, can you share, you know, why are most of the participants, the parents, coming into these classes, in your opinion?
So I'm really glad you asked that question, Daniel. And it's the biggest reason I am seeing a lot of dads really want to join is a lack of community right now with the pandemic. How, I mean, I know we keep saying the pandemic, almost is like need $1 for every time we say it. But really realizing that it's made even the bridges even more vast. It's made the gaps and the distance between needs and wants much even harder for dads to be able to come to. So I think the biggest thing is realizing that a lot of the dads just need this community. They need other dads. They need to be able to realize that their masculinity is a thing to celebrate, that who they are and what they do is a good thing, and that they're not an enemy of anyone. And sometimes changing the narrative, and even with session 5 that we do with the father's role, and even had one of the dads graduate last night and saying that that was the first time in his 22 years of life that he had to realize and reevaluate what it meant to be a man, and what it meant to be a father, and what it meant to be, you know, different from what his father was. And so I'm seeing the biggest thing being a desire to connect, a desire to have community. And the other one as well is, I would mention, which is maybe a third one, a desire to, feel like they belong somewhere. You know, with so much negative news about, you know, fatherhood, you know, and you know, this person did this and that person did this in the news, and it's very debilitating hearing that kind of stuff, and seeing, and someone sees that, and they start seeing men as threats, and you know, it doesn't matter who they are, whether they're a dad of color or anything else, they start taking on that stuff. And so the last part I'll mention, Danny, because I know I'm belaboring the point, and it goes, I guess, with something what Eric would maybe mention, is that some of the dads who are going through custody, who are going through this stuff, sometimes almost personify what their co-parent is saying about them. If they're saying he's dangerous, he's this, he's that, I'm realizing some of the dads are taking on that identity, not challenging it. And because there's such an isolation right now with everybody, with work, with everything else, because they don't have anything to actually get those thoughts out and talk about it, they're trapped with it. They're held hostage. And in many ways, it affects sleep, affects performance, it affects every part of their entire life. And so having this kind of cohort experience where other dads can support each other has been one of the most beneficial things for a lot of the dads have talked about.
Well, thank you for sharing that, John. My last question, and once again, if anyone else had a question, welcome to bring it up, but I see we're going to be at a time boundary soon. So last question for the panel, and perhaps in maybe just one quick sentence you can share back, is just that when it comes to a lot of the service providers who might be here today, what is the one thing that you feel that all service providers can do as allies to fathers in general in terms of accessing services? Why don't we go Chase, then Eric, then John to close?
I think, like with anything, communication, just having the knowing that they're able to talk to somebody, whatever the need is. I don't think that most guys know that that's out there. And I know a lot of people, just men and women, but especially men, just don't know that those things are available to them. And so organizations like ours, lending that hand out, and through the collaboration efforts of talking to each other's organizations and saying, hey, these things are available. We need to do a better job of marketing it and getting it out there.
Thanks, Chase. Eric?
I was just gonna say I don't know that I could really say it any better than Chase did. It's just awareness of resources. The more you talk to somebody, the more the more you realize they may have had a similar situation. They may be a resource for you. They may know about something you didn't know about. So it's just talking to each other and letting one another know what available resources we have out there.
Thanks, Eric. And John?
Yeah, once again, I think our panelists said it even better than I could. The biggest thing is just our marketing right now. I just graduated my third cohort last night. I had some wonderful dads talking about how this program has changed their lives, about what we can do and what we want to be going into 2022, and fathers forging fathers. Well, we need a community for that. We need partners for that. We need to be able to market better. We need your help. Because right now our numbers are low. We're not where we need to be for impact. And if we want to have equitable access for all San Diego fathers, for all San Diego parents, we need your help to be able to bridge that gap, to be able to share this message to other people, because it's a message of hope. This is a message of community. This is a message of changing the narrative in a way that builds bridges, that empowers fathers, that brings communities together, and that the biggest thing is it equalizes. Kids get fathers back, employers get better employees. Everybody wins when fathers win. And so it's my hope and my message to everybody else that you see what the work we're doing here, our partners, and you see a hope and a desire to want to connect with us. So please connect with us. And there's information on this slide. And I know everybody's here at the time crunch, so enjoy the rest of the Live Well engagement experience. And it's been an absolute pleasure to host you for a time where we talked about persistent courage and fatherhood, specifically to San Diego. Thank you for being part of the change. All right. Thank you, everybody. Okay, thank you.
Jonathan, you okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're ending the session. Thank you.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you so much.
You guys did. That was great.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.